The basketball world was shaken. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Fans couldn't believe what they were hearing. Aja Wilson, the face of the WNBA, made a stunning demand. Her words echoed through the sports community, leaving everyone in a state of shock. She called for Caitlin Clark's lifetime suspension. This wasn't just a casual remark. It was a bold statement that demanded attention. This wasn't about a flagrant foul or unsportsmanlike conduct. This was about respect. This was about race. It was about the deeper issues that often go unspoken in the world of sports. Wilson accused Clark, a rising star in women's college basketball, of disrespecting the game and her. She felt that Clark's actions were not just isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern. She pointed to a pattern of behavior fueled by media hype and racial bias. The accusations were serious. They weren't just about one game or one player, they were about systemic issues. They sparked a heated debate about race, privilege, and the future of women's basketball. Wilson's frustration was palpable. It was a frustration that many could relate to, a feeling of being overlooked and undervalued. She felt Clark, a white player, received preferential treatment. The media adored her. Clark was often celebrated for actions that would be criticized if done by others. Clark could get away with actions that would draw heavy scrutiny on other players, especially black athletes. This double standard was glaring and hard to ignore. Wilson believed this disparity stemmed from deeply ingrained biases. Biases that were not just about the game but about society as a whole. Biases that favored a certain image, an image that was often white, often privileged, and often celebrated without question, an image that Clark fit perfectly. She was the media darling, the one who could do no wrong in the eyes of many. Wilson's outrage resonated with many. It wasn't just her fight, it was a fight for all those who felt marginalized and overlooked. It shone a light on the often unspoken realities of race in sports. It forced a conversation long overdue, a conversation that needed to happen for the future of the game and for the future of equality in sports. Aja Wilson didn't mince words. She spoke with conviction and clarity, addressing an issue that has long been a point of contention in sports. She accused the media of blatant favoritism towards Caitlin Clark, a rising star in the basketball world. This wasn't just about talent, Wilson argued. It was about race and the underlying biases that influence media coverage. Clark, with her blonde hair and all-American looks, fit the mold of what the media often celebrates. She was the media darling, gracing magazine covers and receiving extensive coverage. Her every move was celebrated, her flaws were overlooked, and her achievements were magnified. Wilson, a dominant force in the WNBA, felt the sting of this disparity. She had worked tirelessly to reach the pinnacle of her sport. Despite her accolades and achievements, she hadn't experienced the same level of adulation or media attention. The media narrative felt different. It often seemed to downplay her skills and focus on her physical attributes. It often highlighted her power and athleticism, qualities often attributed to black athletes, rather than her strategic mind and finesse. Clark, on the other hand, was praised for her skill, her basketball IQ, her flair, and her strategic thinking. These were narratives often reserved for white athletes, perpetuating a cycle of bias and favoritism. Wilson's accusations ignited a firestorm. Her words resonated with many who had observed similar patterns. Social media became a battleground. Fans and commentators took to platforms like Twitter and Instagram to voice their opinions. Supporters on both sides dug in. The debate raged on, highlighting the deep-seated issues of race and media representation in sports. As the conversation continued, it became clear that this was more than just a rivalry between two athletes. It was a reflection of broader societal issues. The hope is that this dialogue will lead to a more equitable and fair representation of all athletes, regardless of race. Caitlin Clark, for her part, remained composed amidst the storm. She addressed the controversy with a measured response. Her focus, she insisted, was on the game, on improving her skills, on leading her team. She acknowledged the conversations happening around her but refused to be drawn into a public feud. Clark's supporters rallied behind her. They praised her maturity and grace under pressure. Her detractors, however, saw her response as a calculated attempt to deflect. They argued that she was avoiding accountability. The tension continued to build. At the heart of Aja Wilson's frustration lay a deep-seated fear, a fear that gnawed at her even in her moments of triumph. She felt her accomplishments were being overshadowed. Despite her numerous victories and accolades, there was a lingering sense of inadequacy. Clark's meteoric rise, fueled by media hype, threatened to eclipse her own legacy. The constant comparisons and media attention on Clark made Wilson feel like her hard-earned success was being forgotten. Wilson had worked tirelessly to reach the pinnacle of women's basketball. Her dedication, countless hours of practice, and unwavering commitment had brought her to the top. She had earned her accolades, her place in history. Each award, each trophy, was a testament to her skill and perseverance. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that her achievements were being diminished. The recognition she deserved seemed to be slipping away, overshadowed by the next big story. Wilson's concerns resonated with many black athletes. They too felt the sting of being undervalued and overlooked. They understood the feeling of being overlooked, the shared experience of having their hard work and talent minimized, of having to work twice as hard for half the recognition, the constant pressure to prove themselves, to fight for the acknowledgement they rightfully deserved, the fear of being replaced by the next great thing, the anxiety that their time in the spotlight was fleeting and that they could be easily forgotten, a thing that fit a more palatable mold, the struggle to be seen and appreciated for who they truly are, rather than being compared to a more marketable image. Section 5. A Star is Born, Clark's Meteoric Rise. Caitlin Clark's ascent was nothing short of meteoric. She burst onto the scene with a dazzling display of skill and charisma. Her long-range bombs and no-look passes captivated audiences. She was a walking highlight reel. The media couldn't get enough of her. She was the darling of women's college basketball. Clark's style of play was captivating. She was fearless and creative. She played with a joy that was infectious. Fans gravitated towards her. She became a household name. Her popularity soared. She was the face of a new generation of basketball stars. Section 6. The Caitlin Clark Effect. Charisma and Marketability. Caitlin Clark possessed an undeniable IT factor. She was charismatic, relatable, and marketable. Her appeal transcended the basketball court. Brands lined up to partner with her. She was the face of major advertising campaigns. Her jersey sales skyrocketed. Clark's marketability was undeniable. She had the looks, the personality, and the game to be a global icon. Her rise coincided with a growing movement to elevate women's sports. She was the perfect storm, a once-in-a-generation talent poised to change the game. Section 7. The WNBA's silence, a focus on growth. The WNBA found itself in a delicate position. A'ja Wilson's accusations sparked a national conversation about race and representation. The league, however, remained largely silent. It opted for a neutral stance, emphasizing its commitment to growth and inclusivity. The WNBA's silence was strategic. It wanted to avoid alienating either side. It also recognized the immense opportunity presented by Caitlin Clark's popularity. Clark's arrival in the league could potentially draw in a new wave of fans. The league was focused on the bigger picture, on capitalizing on the momentum. Section 8. Unintended Consequences. Wilson's complaints backfire. A'ja Wilson's public complaints had unintended consequences. While her intentions were noble, her delivery sparked backlash. Some perceived her as bitter and jealous. They argued that she was trying to tear down a young star instead of celebrating her success. The controversy threatened to overshadow Wilson's own accomplishments. Instead of focusing on her greatness, the media narrative shifted. It became about her grievances, her frustration, her perceived jealousy. Section 9. Rising Tides. Clark's impact on the WNBA. Despite the controversy, Caitlin Clark's impact on the WNBA was undeniable. Her arrival brought unprecedented attention to the league. Viewership soared. Ticket sales increased. A new generation of fans embraced the WNBA. Clark's star power was undeniable. She elevated the profiles of her teammates and opponents alike. Her rivalry with A'ja Wilson became must-see TV. The league was thriving. Section 10. A Time for Reflection. Wilson's Path Forward. The controversy surrounding A'ja Wilson and Caitlin Clark presented a valuable lesson. It highlighted the importance of grace and sportsmanship. It also underscored the need for constructive dialogue about race and representation in sports. For A'ja Wilson, it was a time for reflection. Her frustration was understandable. Her concerns were valid. However, her approach had unintended consequences. It was time to shift the narrative, to focus on her own legacy. to use her platform to uplift and inspire, to be a leader both on and off the court.